Hello everyone. So welcome to the first part video of NCERT review on metallurgy. Now as per the NCERT, right, this chapter is actually called as general principles and processes of isolation of elements. But because we will be mostly focusing on metals, right, we'll see as we go into the discussion, we'll see that we'll be mostly focusing on the extraction of the metals. That is the reason why in lot of textbooks, including conceptive material also, right, you might see the chapter named as metallurgy. But there is something which is very important about this chapter. That is, if you look at the other chapters, whether we look at chapters in physical chemistry or organic or inorganic, what we'll observe is mostly they are all theoretical. In the sense, our purview of covering the chapter, right, will be limited to the theoretical study. But this is one chapter where we will see how the concepts of or principles of chemistry, right, are applied to the practical industrial processes. So we'll see that how the chemical principles are basically applied in the industry. Now looking at what is it that we'll cover in the chapter, right, we are talking about the entire process of obtaining the metal, starting from so where do we find the metals. If you look at most of the metals, right, they are present in the combined state. Very few of them, like gold, platinum, we call them as what, noble metals. Other than that, most of them are present in the combined state. So whatever we mine from the earth's crust, I'm sure we know earth has got 3 layers. So the topmost layer we'll call it as what, crust, and that is where we'll find most of these chemical forms of obtaining the metal. We call them as what, minerals. So whatever we mine from the earth's crust, right, crust also, we'll have the part which is covered with the rocky region, we call it as what, lithosphere. The other part which is made up of water, we call it as what, hydrosphere. But let's not get into those details. So we'll go with the idea that in the topmost layer we will be having the minerals. But all the minerals, right, it might not be commercially viable to obtain the metal. So only some of these mineral forms, like in that sense, right, even a variety of clay forms will contain aluminum, but not from each of these minerals, right, it might be commercially viable to obtain aluminum. So we will choose only those minerals from which it is commercially viable. The entire process, it makes economic sense. So we call them as what, ore. First stage of this metallurgy will be what we call as enriching of the ore. Basically, when you mine anything out of the earth's crust, right, it will have of course impurities, earthly matter, all your sand, dust, everything will be there. So the first step will be what, removal of all these unwanted particles. We call it as what, enriching of the ore. We can say dressing of the ore, concentration of the ore, like that we can use various terms. That is the first step. Second step will be, at the end of the day, what is this ore? It is a chemical form of the metal, right? So we have to extract the metal from the chemical form. So this is what we will associate with the reduction. So we will see that in the second step, right, we'll have 2 subsections, because when you look at the thermodynamics part of the reduction, right, having the metal in the oxide form will make the reduction thermodynamically more feasible. So if the ore is not in the oxide form, right, we'll have a process to convert a carbonate ore or a sulfide ore into oxide form. We'll talk about that. But the second stage is what, extracting the metal out of the ore. But even the metal that we obtain, right, will not be 100% pure. It will still have some impurities. Now, impurities means sometimes impurities need not be some other substances. It may be like say in case of copper, right, we may have copper oxide itself as impurity. So we will go for processes which will give us a refined metal. So that's the third stage which we call as the refining. Even after refining also, right, it is not like, because as I said, we're talking about practically doing the things right. It's not like we'll have 100% pure metal form. We will be still having some impurities, okay, but to the extent possible we'll try to refine it. So this is the broad scheme that we are going to cover in the chapter. And of course we'll also have one small section about alloys, like that is also an important area for questions. Even if you look at the past year questions, right, JEE mains or even NEET, you will see that they have asked questions on the alloys. Alloys are what? Metal mixtures for some specific uses, right? We'll make combination of these metals. So the questions can be as straightforward as they will ask us, what is the composition of the bell metal. Bell metal is an alloy, we'll see that. Like that they will give us straight questions on the composition, or they can give us straight questions on the uses and applications, like where bronze is used, like that. So this is about the overall coverage of the chapter. Now what we'll do is we'll get started. So other than a few elements like the chapter, right, we will still call it as what? The general principles and process for the isolation of the elements. So we'll keep it at covering all the elements. So hence you'll see that some of the discussion points, right, will be referring to all the elements, but as I said, majority of the focus in the chapter will be on the metals, extraction of metals. Other than few elements like carbon will be in the elemental form, allotropic forms of carbon, remember, graphite and diamond. Even sulfur also. So in 16th group we will see what are the allotropic forms of sulfur. So they will be present in the free form, or basically they will not be combined with any other element. When it comes to metals, right, we have gold, platinum. So these are what? Even to some extent silver also. But silver also will be present as a compound. So when you have these metals, less reactive ones, right, in the free or the uncombined state, we will see that the methods of extraction will be slightly different. Whatever the 3-step scheme that we talked about, it is for broad, covering majority of the metals which are present in the combined state. But for these ones, right, we'll have a slightly different approach. We'll talk about it. Even in gases, right, we'll have the noble gases, whether it is helium, neon, argon, they will be what? Present in the free state. But rest all elements, you talk about iron, you talk about copper, you talk about aluminum, all of them are what? Present in the combined state. And where they are found in the Earth's crust. And this entire extraction and isolation of the elements, right, will be involving, of course, principles of chemistry. That is why we have it in chemistry. Now the thing is, when you look at the entire process of metallurgy, right, or the metallurgical process, we should keep two things in consideration, because in the previous chapters, right, we were only focused on the aspect of chemistry. Like we will of course have to focus on the chemical feasibility of the reaction or the phenomena. Along with that, since I said this is where we are going to see how the chemical principles are applied, we also have to keep an eye on the commercial viability. So any metallurgical process we are talking about, right, should be what? Chemically feasible. A normal chemistry chapter means what? We'll stop there. But here we will not just stop there. We will also talk about what? Economic, how viable it is. So these are the two aspects that we need to keep in mind whenever we talk about the metallurgical process. In fact, this reminds me of some experience that I personally had. Like during my first year of engineering, right? we used to have introduction to chemical engineering. Okay, that's a course for all the first year chemical engineers, right? We'll have the course called as Introduction to Chemical Engineering. So that time the IIT Madras professor, right, Professor Anant, I mean, basically, you know, the directors, they need not have to take any courses. In the sense, you know, they'll have their non-academic responsibilities. But people do engage themselves, like, you know, they'll take courses in their specific area, or sometimes they might even come and take like, you know, so that year, right, Professor Anant, he has taken the Introduction to Chemical Engineering for us. So in one of the first classes, right, he was asking, I still remember that, okay, so he asked what is the difference between a chemical engineer and a chemist. Okay, and obviously he has got a lot of responses from the students, but what he told us, right, I still remember it even till this day, that a chemical engineer is a chemist, means what, he should have sound understanding of the chemical principles. That is what we expect from a chemist, right? With an economic sense, means you should always be open to what, if we are choosing this process, what economic sense it will make. But of course, this chapter, right, I'm sure some of you might be aware, in engineering, this will be offered as a separate branch itself. Like, you know, we have including IIT Madras, there is this, you know, metallurgy and material sciences. That's a branch. But yeah, so throughout the chapter, right, we'll always be talking about this economic viability and basically the cost aspect of it. Now, like I said, right, the chemical form of the metals that are available in the Earth's crust, which we mine, we call them as what? Minerals. So minerals are what? The naturally occurring chemical substances. But only from few of these mineral forms, right, it makes a commercially viable idea to extract the metals, and such minerals are what we will be referring as ore. I already gave the definition of the ore then, but we can see it here. What is it? Whatever the mineral from which we can extract the metal in a viable manner. So viable means what? We're talking about the viability in terms of the chemical principles and viability in terms of the economics. Like I said, right, some forms of clay might have aluminium, but extracting it from these clay forms, right, might not be making economic sense. Or we'll see sometimes, right, the chemical viability might not be there for some select scenarios. So all this, right, we have to keep in mind. So we have to look at the viability in terms of the chemical process, and also we have to look at the viability in terms of the economics. So looking at what is the ore basically contains, ore will be containing, along with the chemical form of the metal, it will also contain these unwanted or undesired materials, earthly matter, dust, all this, and we call them as what? Gangue particles. So gangue is a general word. Whatever the impurities along with the metal, right, we call it as what? Gangue. And like we said, right, the extraction steps. What is the first step? Concentration of the ore, removing all the gangue particles. Second step is isolation of the metal from the concentrated ore. Now we got the concentrated ore. We want to isolate the metal. See, what is a ore? Ore is basically a chemical form of the metal, right? From it, we want to get the metal. As I said, this will be involving what? Reduction. The third stage is once we get the metal, right, still there might be some impurities, we have to purify it. And this entire scientific and technological processes, right, that are used in this process, that branch or that stream of study is what we will be calling as metallurgy. It's a vast subject. I mean, you can understand, right? When it is offered as a branch of engineering, it's a very vast area. But in our purview, we will have a limited study. And the thing that we need to keep in mind is that, whenever we are talking about the metallurgical process, right, we will be also touching upon the thermodynamic and electrochemical aspects. So where and when we will talk about these thermodynamic and electrochemical aspects, right, we will see once we go into the details of the extraction steps. Now, talking about the occurrence, we said, we're talking about the availability of these metals in the Earth's crust. Aluminium, right, it is the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust. So first is oxygen, then silicon. Aluminium comes the third, but it is the first among the metals. So aluminium is the most abundant metal, third most abundant in the Earth's crust. It will account for what, 8.3% by weight. I mean, percentage might not be important, but the order can be important. And it is a major component of the igneous minerals. Igneous minerals means basically, when the lava is oozing out and it condenses later, right? The rocks and all these things, we call them as what? Igneous rocks. So it's a major component of the igneous minerals, including even mica. So in India, right, we have a considerable number of these mica mines, even clay forms, right, as I said. Aluminum is even present in some impure forms. Gemstones is a very good example for that. With chromium as impurity, right, we have ruby. These can be possible questions. So what is present along with Al2O3? Al2O3 is the chemical form of aluminium. We call it as what? Alumina. Along with Al2O3 in ruby, right, what is the impurity? Chromium. In sapphire, these are all gemstones. In sapphire, what is the impurity? Cobalt. So these can be possible questions. So always when we are reading through the NCERT, right, we should be keeping an eye on what are the possible questions that can be asked. Iron is the second most abundant metal. First most abundant is what? Aluminium. Second most is iron. Iron can be present in various, like, we have oxides of iron, hematite, magnetite. We will see the list also. And sulfide forms are there. Even carbonate forms also will be there. Just like our, remember the first and second groups, right? First group we talked about sodium, potassium. They are important in terms of biological systems. Second group we talked about the magnesium and calcium. Their importance in terms of the biological systems. Similarly, iron also, right? I'm sure some of us would be knowing it. It is a part of what? Hemoglobin. The hemoglobin complex, it contains what? Iron. So that is also, iron is also part of the biological systems. So we'll see what are, see here, one possible question can be that what is the element and its corresponding ore. So we'll definitely have to look at whatever is there in the NCERT. Beyond that also, we can sometimes, look for some common, we may have lead is an example. Maybe we can look at tin, the other common ones. Okay. So, and mercury. So we'll try to cover only the ones that are given in the NCERT, because we don't want to too much drag beyond NCERT. Then the title of the video itself has to be changed. Okay. So look at, the aluminium, right? Bauxite. It is the hydrated aluminium oxide. It will have a variable depending upon the extent of hydration. The composition will be variable. Look at this. What is it? AlOX OH 3 minus 2x. Just if you remember, it is the hydrated aluminum oxide, that is sufficient. Nobody will ask us, to express in this formula. Then we have a type of clay which we call as kaolinite. This we need to keep in mind. Al2OH 4 times, Si2O5. Apart from that, we also have Na3AlF6 cryolite. Then we have feldspars, these potassium aluminum minerals, right? They are present in various types of rocky structures. So feldspar is there. So these are the other common ores of the aluminum. But the bauxite is the most prominent one. We can say it's the principal ore. Coming to iron, right? We have hematite, Fe2O3, magnetite, siderite, FeCO3. Iron pyrites is what? FeS2. So all the iron ones we have to remember. The thing about the iron is these ores, right? They will have magnetic properties. Now, why they will have magnetic properties? We will know the reason once we cover the coordination compounds. Basically, the ions, if they are having unpaired electrons, right, we will see that they will get what? Magnetic properties. Other than these iron ores, right, some other ores also, like we may have manganese dioxide, we call it as pyrolusite. Some of the other ores also can have magnetic properties. The importance of these ores having magnetic properties, right, we will understand once we go to the metallurgical processes, right. Sometimes when either the ore particles or the impurities gang, if either of them are having magnetic properties, right, that will be useful for us. We'll talk about it when we go to the metallurgical process. The other one is what? Copper. Look at this. Copper pyrites, CuFeS2. This is the major one. Then we have malachite. What is malachite? CuCO3 dot CuOH twice. Cuprite, Cu2O. Copper glans, Cu2S. Then we have zinc. Zinc is what? Zinc blende or sphalerite. What is it? ZnS. Then we have calamine. Calamine is what? Zinc carbonate. Zincite, zinc oxide. Then maybe for lead, right, we can take the examples of PBS, which we call as galena. Then we have PbCO3, lead carbonate, right, we call it as white lead. And as I said, you can look at the other mercury also. You can look at some examples. Tin, you can look at some examples. Like that you can cover some of the other prominent metals also. But as I said, right, we will try to limit as much our discussion to the NCERT as possible. But whatever is given in the NCERT, we must be thorough. Now the ore that we choose for the process of extraction, right, obviously depends upon what? The availability. So we said for aluminum we have what is the principal ore? Bauxite. So we'll choose bauxite. For the iron, right, we have iron oxides, hematite, magnetite is there. Then we have sulfide form, carbonate form is also there. If there is a possibility, right, I'm saying if there is a possibility, because see, for example, if only iron sulfide form is available, we have to go with it. We will not have a choice. If there is a possibility, we will prefer using the oxides. Why? Because we will see later the sulfide form of the iron ore, right, we will convert them into oxide form before the reduction. So we will talk about this process and why we have to convert them into oxide form, that also we will understand. Okay, the reason will be based on the thermodynamic feasibility, right, of the reduction process. It is easy to reduce the oxide form than the sulfide form. So we will have a process called as roasting, in which we will be able to convert the sulfide form into oxide form. But the thing is, in roasting we will have sulfur dioxide gas that will be released, which is harmful. We know, sulfur dioxide, when it is getting into atmosphere, right, it can cause acid rain and all that. So when you're using the sulfide forms of the ore, right, we may get polluting gases like sulfur dioxide. If you are using the sulfide form, iron pyrites. But if we use oxide, means this will not be happening. That is the reason why we actually prefer using the oxide form given a choice. But as I said, the important thing is what? Availability. If only iron pyrites is available, we have to use it, that's it. Now of late, right, there is also emphasis on the aspects like the environmental considerations in any metallurgical process you take, starting from the enriching of the ore stage up to the final refining stage, because at probably 30-40 years before, not much attention is given to what are the kind of environmental effects that these metallurgical industries are having. As we go into the discussion, right, I'll keep explaining in each case what can be the harmful effects on the environment, because every industrial process, right, can have some harmful effects on the environment. Okay, so that aspect also we have to keep in mind. So the first stage, right, is basically what the enriching of the ore. That is the first step. Enriching of the ore means what? Removing all the unwanted gangue impurities. But before we do that, right, the ore particles, they will be graded and then they will be crushed to the reasonable size. And once we crush them to reasonable size, then we will start having the concentration of the ore. So the removal of unwanted materials, right, whether it is sand or clay, the process we can call it as what? Concentration of the ore. We can say dressing of the ore. We can say enriching of the ore. We can say what? Benefaction also. All these names we can use for it. So what is the process involved in this? It will be involving majorly physical phenomena. So we'll have steps like gravity separation. This is one method. Then we'll have magnetic separation. Okay. Then we have froth flotation. These are the three physical methods. We also have a chemical method which is called as leaching. But majorly what is it? It is the physical methods. Now which method we choose for the enriching of the ore, right, will be depending upon the properties of both ore particles and gangue particles. Okay, so the properties of the compound of the metal as well as the gangue, right, based on that we will choose. And also, like I said, the environmental factors have to be taken into consideration. So whenever we are choosing specific metallurgical process, right, we have to keep an eye on what is the environmental effect that it will be creating. So we'll see one by one, what are the processes that are there in the first stage of extraction. What is the first stage of extraction? It is the concentration of the ores. In this we will begin with the gravity separation. Gravity separation can be also called as what? Hydraulic washing. Because here we will take the help of the water flow. That's why we also call it as what? Hydraulic washing. So what is this? I'll tell you what used to happen in the olden days in terms of the metal extraction. So if there is an upward stream of running water, imagine if there is an upward stream of running water. Okay, so running water is moving upward stream. Okay, we dump all these ore into that upward stream. What happens is the heavier ore particles will be falling at the bottom, whereas the lighter gangue particles or the impurities, right, they will be taken away with the water flow. The lighter gangue particles are washed away, whereas the heavier particles will be left behind. Since this is happening because of what? The difference in terms of the, we are using the word gravity, basically meaning what? The ore particles are more strongly pulled by the gravitational force, means what? Their mass is more, they are heavier, that's it. So we are using the difference in terms of the gravities of the ore and the gangue particles, right? That is why we also call it as what? Gravity separation. Okay, so this is what used to happen. But then remember I said, when you do this, what happens? The because if you're doing it means you are probably using what? The naturally available river bodies, or lake, whatever it is, the gangue particles will be going along with the water, and if there are people who are surviving on the water, because we never know, right? The impurities can have different chemical composition. It might be causing very harmful effects to people, and that is the reason why nowadays, right, you don't see people actually using the hydraulic washing in this sense. But what we have is a hydraulic washing setup where you will not create an upward stream of running water, because that will be costing more energy. Imagine, so if you have to send water to the top, means what? You will be spending more energy. So that is the reason I said, we are not going with the natural water body, because it will be what? It will be causing environmental effects. So we don't go for it. At the same time, we don't create an upward steep and then pass the water. We will not artificially create that kind of setup. Why? Because it will be consuming energy. So what we have is we'll have a water flow, but with wedges on the platform. The wedges basically, so you can see here the heavy ore, right? The wedges basically prevent, even on the bed of the platform, right? The ore particles can be moving, but these wedges, they will prevent the ore particles from moving. Only these lighter gangue particles, right? They will be carried away by the water. These wedges basically, so it will not be on an upward steep plane. It will be on the normal horizontal surface only, but we will keep these wedges so that the ore particles will be stopped. You can see ore particles will be typically in between the two wedges. So this is how we might do the hydraulic washing in the present context. Okay, so this is the first process in the concentration of the ore. I mean, the point is, when do we use it? When we have the ore particles and the gangue particles having a considerable difference in their gravities, then only we can use it. If both are having similar densities, meaning similar weight, then what happens? They will behave in a similar way, right? Either they both will be settling, or they both will be carried away by the water flow. So every process, right, we have to look at what is the condition. The second process is magnetic separation. Remember, I talked about the ores of iron as well as the other ores like manganese dioxide, like that, pyrolusite. All of them, they have what? Magnetic characteristics. Means they will be attracted towards the magnet. So if you have either the ore or the gangue, either of them capable of being attracted by the magnetic field, that is when we will say that they have not magnetic properties. Then we can use this method called as what? Magnetic separation. How it will work, I'll just tell you. So on a conveyor belt, right, we'll have a finely ground ore that will be passing on the conveyor belt. It will come to the magnetic roller side. Here what happens is, look at this. If there are particles which are not having any magnetic properties, right, because they have velocity, like projectile, they'll just go and fall at a farther distance. All these are what? Non-magnetic. Whereas if there are particles which are attracted to the magnet, right, they will come along with the belt for some more distance and they will be falling closer to it. So the particles that will be falling closer to the magnetic roller, right, what are those? They are the magnetic particles. The non-magnetic, they will be falling far away, like a projectile type. So if either the ore or the gangue, one of them is having magnetic properties, right, then using the method we can separate. You can see, if you are going with iron ores, they have magnetic properties. Similarly, pyrolusite, magnetic properties. So we can separate these ores from the impurities. Okay, so this is what is the magnetic separation method. Then we have the all important froth flotation method. So this is a method that is used for the removing of the gangue from sulfide ore. So the sulfide ore, right, the particles of the sulfide ore, they have a peculiar property, that is they will have more wettability by oils, whereas the gangue particles, right, dust, everything, that will be wetted more by the water. We will see how this can be exploited. So if you make a suspension of the powdered ore in water, so you take a suspension of the powdered ore in water, it will be in a huge tank, and inside this water we have the suspension of the ore. It will have what? Both the gangue as well as the ore form. To this, right, we will add collectors and froth stabilizers. So here, we are also going to look at what are the examples of the collectors and what are the examples of the froth stabilizers. I'll tell you first what is the role of this. Collector is also called as what? Foaming agent. All your oils, pine oil, fatty acids, xanthates. So xanthates are basically ROCS2 minus, either Na plus or K plus. These are the xanthates. That they will be able to create the foam. That's why we call it as what? Foaming agent. If you have a paddle and you bubble the air through it, right, you will see that the foam will get generated. And what they will basically do is they will enhance the non-wettability of the mineral particles. Basically all the mineral particles, right, they will be wetted more by the foaming agent, collector. So what happens is the mineral particles, right, they will be wet by the oils, while the gangue particles are wet by the water. You can have a rotating paddle that will agitate the mixture, and as a result of it, right, the foam that is getting created, or the froth, right, since the foam will have a lesser density, it will keep rising up. That is common thing that we see, right, whenever you try to create some foam in soap water, what do we see? Foam will be rising up. So along with the foam, the mineral particles will come. So the foam that is carrying the mineral particles, right, along with it, it will come to the top. We can just skim it off. Sometimes, as it is coming to the top, right, it will also be able to move into the adjacent container. And here the thing is, the foam that is getting created, right, normally itself we just try to understand, if you are creating a foam in water, means what? It will easily get suppressed. But here we will require the foam to be stable for a longer period. So that is the reason why we add froth stabilizers. Okay, what are the examples of the froth stabilizers? We have cresols and aniline. What is the cresol? On the benzene ring, we have a methyl group and OH group. We have on a benzene ring, we have what? Methyl and OH. So we will call it as what? Orthocresol. Then we can have paracresol, metacresol, like that. Aniline also. I'm sure now we know what is aniline. Benzene ring, we have what? NH2. So what is the role of these froth stabilizers? They will stabilize the froth. Otherwise, if the foam is getting created, it is getting easily suppressed, means what? It will not rise to the top. It has to be stable. Then only lot of foam will be created and it will be rising to the top. And when it is rising to the top, right, along with it, it will also carry what? The mineral particles. So it can be skimmed off. I'll show you. Okay, you can see here, this is the paddle. You can see the paddle, right? What is happening here? All the froth that is coming out of the top, it is basically skimmed off, and along with it, it will carry the mineral particles. And once we have that skimmed off foam, right, we will allow it to suppress, dry it, we can recover the ore particles. So the entire the gangue particles, all the unwanted materials, right, they are left behind in the vessel. Only the foam which has the mineral particles, right, that is coming out. So this is about the froth flotation. So you can see here we have the rotating paddle and the mineral froth. Why do we call it as a mineral froth? Because this froth is carrying the mineral particles. It is coming to the top and it can be what, skimmed off. Okay, and all the gang, everything will be left behind in the container itself. Okay, so this is about the froth flotation method. Now the thing is, when we look at some cases, we may have two sulfide forms. Like, you know, if you have a mixture of both zinc sulfide and lead sulfide, right? And we want to particularly allow one of them to come into the foam or froth, then we can use substances which we call as depressants. See, remember, all these are possible questions wherever we have a category of a chemical substance and the corresponding examples. So here we can look at sodium cyanide as a depressant. So what this will do, it will selectively allow one type of ore to come into the froth. So between zinc sulfide and lead sulfide, right, this will prevent zinc sulfide from coming into the froth, but will be allowing the lead sulfide. So thereby what happens, the froth that is coming out, right, will be having only the lead sulfide part. Zinc sulfide will be still there in the solution itself. Okay, so this is how we will have the role of the depressant. Again, why, I mean, only the PBS is coming along with the froth? It is dependent upon what? The wettability. So the PBS, it is getting what? Relatively more wettability with the oil by the use of the sodium cyanide. As a result, what is happening? The PBS is able to go along with the froth, whereas the zinc sulfide is left in that, we can call it as a solution, or we can call it as, to be more precise, we can call it as what? Suspension. Okay, so this is about the froth flotation method. Now the thing is, froth flotation is used for the sulfide ores. Why? Because the sulfide ore particles have more wettability with the oil, whereas the other gang particles, impurities, right, they are wetted more by the water. On that basis, we are able to separate them. I mean, it will be interesting to know the story behind the invention of this froth flotation. Like the chemist Everson, right, his washerwoman, she has accidentally discovered that while washing clothes, right, all the sand, dirt, everything is falling at the bottom of the wash tub, like left behind in the vessel. But the copper bearing compounds, right, they are coming along with the soap suds. They are coming to the top along with the soap suds. The gang and everything is settling behind, settling at the bottom. And this is what is expanded into the idea of froth flotation, right? So this idea, the chemist has taken it, and that's what has resulted in the invention of the froth flotation for the sulfide ores. So in fact, this has really helped in making sure that, because previously, right, only the extraction of copper ore is limited to the forms of ore that contain large amounts of copper. Okay, we'll say metal rich ores. Some ores are what? Metal rich. So previously the extraction of copper, right, is limited to only those ores which are metal rich. But with the froth flotation, right, even the low grade sulfide ores also, now we are able to extract the metal in a profitable manner. And so once this happened, obviously what will be the outcome of this? Overall production of the copper will be increasing, and thereby what? When the production is more means supply is more, the overall cost of the metal will become less. So for anything when the supply is more, right, cost will be reduced. I mean, this is something to do with the economics. We call it as demand supply chain. So probably if you get a chance to study this, you will be able to understand. I mean, this is also more of common sense, right? When there is more supply means what? For the same demand, when there is more supply means the cost obviously will be reduced. So this is about the story behind the invention of the froth flotation method. So by this, we have talked about the three physical processes. So what are the three physical processes? We started with the gravity separation, then magnetic, then froth flotation. Now we are going into the chemical method. What is the chemical method? It is called as what? Leaching. So the idea of leaching is very straightforward and simple. If you have ore which is soluble in a suitable solvent, so when you mine it, right, you will have the ore actual chemical form, along with that we will have the impurities. If only the ore is coming into the solution, right, means from solid state it become, if the solvent is there, for example, I mean if it's an aqueous solution means it will be coming into what? Aqueous state, it will come into the solution. We can then filter it, we can filter the solution, all the solid gangue particles will be separated. From this solution, right, we will then have to have a process to get back the ore. So understand what is it? First you have the ore along with the gangue particles which is in the solid state. We use a solvent, whereas only the ore particles will come into the solution. Other gangue, everything is still in the solid. We filter it. Solids can be separated. Now the solution you take, we have to process the solution, because inside the solution what is there? The compound of the metal is there. We have to process the solution to get back the ore. Thereby we will be able to obtain pure form of the ore. So for this, right, we will discuss two examples. First example is leaching of alumina from the bauxite. Bauxite, we said, right, it's the main ore or the principal ore for the aluminium. It will contain, along with the Al2O3, it will contain what? Silicon dioxide. These are all the impurities. This is a possible question. What are the impurities? Silicon dioxide will be there. Iron oxides will be there. Titanium oxide will be there. Okay. So in fact, we also have a question about the nature of these impurities. So what are the impurities of the bauxite? SiO2, oxides of iron, and then titanium oxide. The first step of the leaching is we will digest this powdered ore in a concentrated solution of NaOH at temperature of 473 to 523 and a high pressure 35 to 36 bar. These numbers might not be important in terms of questions, but yeah. What happens is the Al2O3 will be leached, means what? It will come into solution as what? Sodium aluminate. Look at this. Al2O3 will react with NaOH. It is forming what? Sodium aluminate. Along with that, right, what are the impurities? SiO2, oxides of iron, and then titanium oxide. SiO2 also will come into solution. So what we said is we would prefer having only the ore coming into it, but sometimes we cannot direct everything as per our requirement, right? It happens. SiO2 also will come into solution. It will come into solution as what? Sodium silicate. Then the second step will be to separate, because we want to separate the chemical form of aluminium from the silicon, because the impurity is what? Silicon dioxide, right? From that we are getting what? Sodium silicate. So we have to remove, or we have to separate the aluminium chemical form from that. So the solution now contains what? Sodium aluminate, sodium silicate. We will pass CO2 into the solution, CO2 gas. What happens is only the aluminate will get neutralized. Sodium silicate will not react, only the aluminate will be reacting. Look at this. The aluminate will react with CO2 to give us what? Hydrated Al2O3. And this is another practical process that we do. So from this solution, right, we are expecting that the hydrated Al2O3 will precipitate. But to induce the precipitation, right, we will be seeding the solution with freshly prepared samples of Al2O3. Like you see, these are what? The samples of Al2O3 freshly prepared that we seed it into the solution. What happens is because of the coercive forces. So we have Al2O3 particles in the solution, right? Because of the coercive forces coming into picture, right? They will be able to induce the precipitation. So all the Al2O3 hydrated will get precipitated. Whereas the sodium silicate is left in the solution itself. Now we will again filter it. If you filter it means what we will get? The solid is what we are interested now, because solid will be what? Hydrated Al2O3 is the solid. Solution is what is containing the sodium silicate. Now again I mentioned it before. It's not like we are getting the solution of sodium silicate, we will just throw it out. We have to look at what is the environmental effect of, so whatever we can call it as a byproduct or the other products that are getting formed as a result of the process, right? We should make sure that either they are used in environmental chemistry. We talk about something called as green chemistry principles. Like if sodium silicate is coming, so we'll have to see if that can be used in any other industrial process. So we'll see. The solution contains what? Sodium silicate. The hydrated alumina, we can filter it out. Filter it, then dry, and when you heat it, right, up to 1470, what happens? The water will be removed and we'll have what? Pure alumina. So this is about the leaching of alumina from the bauxite. This is the third step. Okay, so what are the three steps? One is digesting the solution. The solvent is what? Concentrated NaOH. Into the solution, both SiO2 is coming. These can be possible questions. What is the chemical compound formed by the SiO2? What is the chemical compound formed? It is sodium silicate. With Al2O3, what is the chemical compound formed? It is the sodium aluminate. And then when we pass CO2 through the solution, right, aluminate will react, whereas the sodium silicate will not react. Next we look at the second example of leaching. This is a slightly different category. Why? Because this is not just enriching or concentration of the ore. It is also the method for the entire preparation of the metal from its ore. We'll see. For the less reactive ones, like silver or gold, right, when they are present along with the impurities, they will be leached with a dilute solution of sodium cyanide or potassium cyanide in the presence of O2 actually. In higher studies of metallurgy, you might know this. When the kinetics of this leaching is performed, right, it is understood that the rate of leaching is enhanced when the dissolved oxygen content is more. For getting more dissolved oxygen content, we have to supply more oxygen. But if due to the cost consideration we are not able to supply oxygen, means we have to supply at least air, so that because air will contain what? Oxygen. So the first step is what? Look at this. The metals, right, they will be leached into the solution metal you can observe it is what? Solid state. When they are coming into solution, they will come into solution as what? Cyanide complex. Here M is what? Either gold or silver. Even they can ask question on this also. What is the chemical form? MCN twice whole minus. The second step will be, as I said, this is what? Not just concentration of the ore. This is in fact the entire method for the obtaining of the metal itself. To this solution, right, we will be adding a relatively high reactive metal like zinc. Then what happens is a displacement reaction. Zinc is relatively more reactive than gold and silver, right? So it will displace gold and silver from its compounds. So zinc will get into the complex, metals will come out. They will come out in the solid state. Filter it, you will have what? The pure metal. Pure metal means we might still have some amount of impurities, but this is not just the enriching of the ore. This is what? The method for the entire preparation of the metal. And as I said, right, the process for the metals which are available in the free state. So here we are talking about what? Metals available in the free state, whether it is a gold or a silver like that. As I said, the process will be slightly different from the rest of the others, and we can see it here. Okay, so here also look at what are the possible questions now. What are the possible questions? The solvent used for the leaching and the formula for the complex, and what is the reaction that is happening? What is the final reaction that is happening here? Displacement reaction. So we look at these in-text questions. Which of the following ores that are mentioned in table 6.1, the table that we saw, right, can be concentrated by the magnetic separation? Remember what we said? In the table they have given what? Iron ores, right? They will have magnetic properties. Second question, what is the significance of leaching in the extraction of aluminum? So look at this now. What is the significance of leaching in the extraction of aluminum? Bauxite has got all the oxide impurities. If they are not removed, they are coming along with the ore. What is the ore here? Alumina, right? We will see later that the reduction for the alumina, right, is not done by using a reducing agent. It will be done by what? Electrolytic reduction method. And aluminum is a highly electropositive element. Where electropositive elements will come in the electrochemical series, they will come at the bottom. Iron, titanium, they will be coming at the top. So if you perform the electrolysis, right, which will get reduced first? Iron will get reduced first. Titanium will get reduced first. So if we don't remove them, means even in the electrolytic reduction rate, they will get reduced first. So they will form in the metallic state even before the aluminum. So that is the reason why we should, generally we can say the impurities have to be removed by leaching, but the thing is if you don't remove the impurities, because as I said, the impurities are what? Oxide form. If they come along with the ore, right, what happens? Even in the next stage of metallurgical process, that is the electrolytic reduction, right, these oxides will get reduced first. So remember, it's not like an industrial process, right, is only limited to one particular reaction study. We have to take into consideration all the things that we have learned so far. So here we are talking about what? The using of the knowledge that we have got based on the electrochemical series. If you look at the position of the elements in the electrochemical series, right, the ones at the top, they will get reduced first. The ones at the bottom, they will get oxidized first. So in the table, right, aluminum will come at the bottom, come at the iron and titanium, they will come at the top. So what happens? They will get reduced even before the Al2O3. Okay, so this is the importance of leaching of alumina from the bauxite.